Is the camera ready? Let's go. Let's start all over again now and they can record me. I know why they're recording me. I'm an old person and they're trying to record me so that when I'm long dead I will be babbling at the University of Waterloo forever. I know what the plan of that camera is all about. It is certainly my pleasure to be here. I predate Communitech, and I have watched the effect of Communitech in the economy to help many of its enterprises, including those of my former students, a significant number of which appeared on the screen and are referred to by my colleague. So I simply reiterate that, and I want to continue the theme of entrepreneurship. It has been one of my specialties in economics right from the beginning, and I just want to talk about it in more detail. Just to give you one sort of quick background, presently I am not in the classroom teaching economics. I have left temporarily because I've been seconded to the provost office, and I'm working with Howard Armitage and Bud Walker, and what we're doing is reinforcing and increasing the entrepreneurial supports that we provide to all of our students. So part of what I also want to do is give you a brief introduction to the new things that are being done at the University of Waterloo. None of them replace what Communitech is doing because we're trying to increase the supply of new enterprises into the community. I absolutely agree that this is one of the best places that we can do to support enterprise, although I differ on one thing with my colleague, and that is that we have something Silicon Valley does not have, and it is our ace in the hole. I also don't like being second best, so I think we can be best. That corridor is remarkably similar in scale and size to that in California, and we have it. We have skiing, all right, not quite as good as their skiing. We have wine. We have a harbor. We have a bay. We have it all. And we have something they do not have. And it's something that particularly that you should find very interesting because it's you. There is something at the University of Waterloo that allows this place to do enterprise. I've been here a long time. It has often tormented me to wonder why there are so many startups from this place. There were startups when I arrived here. The second student I ever saw for enterprise was Mike Lazaridis. You need to understand that he already had role models of persons who started enterprises, his classmates, some of his professors, or at least broadly speaking within his department. He actually thought to himself, well, why can't I do it? Because he had other examples. By 1981, which is when I arrived here, there is already startup activity at the University of Waterloo, and it actually goes back almost to the very founding of the University of Waterloo. This is a peculiar place where such a large proportion of its students in relative terms start enterprises, and a very large proportion of its faculty members start enterprises, and from the very earliest days. Now you should wonder why that, and I've tried to figure this out. I think I have the answer because I've been struggling with this problem for a long time. I want to understand what makes you peculiar. You are peculiar. Don't look at me. You're University of Waterloo students, and by definition you are in fact peculiar. Now, I'm going to get to you as economics students in a minute because you also make me twitch, so I'm here to vent some of my frustrations as well. But one of the advantages that you have here, but it's not an advantage if you don't notice, and it's an advantage. So your advantage here, which goes to partly explain why there are so many startups. It has, of course, to do with cooperative education, which also dates from the early days. This is the world's largest cooperative education program on earth. They don't have it at Stanford. They don't have it at MIT. They don't have it at MIT. They don't have it at Harvard, and they do not have it at the University of California at Berkeley. We are pumping through, in a year or so, we will pump through 20,000 students into enterprise. And do you know what that means? It means two critically important things with respect to enterprise. Somebody asked about, well, you know, what is the best industry to enter? Who was the person who asked the question? I couldn't see from... Yeah, okay, well, that's an important question. And one reason that this is such an interesting place is you're at your co-op jobs, and you see something at your co-op job, and you think, stupid. Don't look at me. A lot of you have had co-op jobs. You've thought of a lot of things. Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Now, of course, some of you think it's the stupidest thing you've ever seen, and then a few of you think, why couldn't I fix it? Why couldn't I fix it? The fact is, at young age, you are put in an intense industrial environment, and people expect you to work for some kind of income. Like, why aren't you being useful? And then you look around. That is amazing to have a 19-year-old in serious companies, in some of the biggest banks, in some of the biggest tech firms, you're at General Motors, you're at Ford, you're at Chrysler, you're at all the Canadian banks, you're at most of the insurance companies, most of the investment dealers, you work in hedge funds in New York, you work at Tesla Motors, you work at Apple, you work at Pixar, you work at all the great honored roll companies, you work there, and you're not even 20 yet. Do you understand how interesting that is? So one of the reasons people do enterprise is they have ideas. You know, an idea, something that you're interested in, something that provokes you, something that is incredibly stupid. Let's start with an example, shall we? I like examples. So, you're an arts student. We'll get to the econ students in a minute. I'm going to start with the Faculty of Arts. You're in the history department. Oh my. Oh my, you are getting a degree in history. Now, why are you giggling? See, they're giggling already about history degrees. Because you're giggling. Yet, don't you look at me, you were giggling. You're giggling because you think, oh, who in their right mind would take a history degree? And what would they do with it? You know what people take history degrees for. They're going to teach secondary school. Well, that would be okay if we were still having babies. We're not. We're not. The secondary school, the elementary schools are closing. We're closing elementary schools because the birth rate's below replacement and we're running out of children. It is almost impossible to get a teaching position in high school, so I hope you're not trying to teach high school economics. Those positions are few and far between. And history is even worse because there's few history, because in high school they don't history. You still need history teachers, but you'd have to have students. You're running out of students in general. And of course, what if I've got a student? What if I've got a student who learns about entrepreneurship in his Economics 101 class and does not think he wants to teach history? He doesn't want to teach it to high school students. He surely doesn't want to teach it to university students. Not, of course, that he could get a job at a university either, because, of course, you don't opt for history courses either. Don't you look at me, you don't. So what's the poor guy going to do? What's the poor guy going to do? Work as a clerk at Walmart. That's what you're... Oh, yeah, see? That's what he was thinking. No. He's history co-op. He's in the workplace. And he notices something wrong in the workplace. And he has what you need if you're going to be an entrepreneur. Either you're working independently, and there are also entrepreneurial employees. In other words, people who are going to provide leadership, either within their organization, or they want to create their own company and lead it absolutely. So the dippy historian, who you think is unemployable, sees something in the workplace. That's the power of cooperative education. He sees it in the workplace, and it's a screw-up in the workplace. Do you know what his job in the workplace is? To fix something. I'm thinking, so he fixes it, that co-op job, he gets paid. He discovers, because he's curious, because he asks questions, because he understands the advantage to him to be so young in large organizations. And he starts noticing that years before, co-op student after co-op student after co-op student after co-op student is hired to fix the same thing. And he thinks, whoa, why shouldn't it be right? And he's hired to fix it. So why doesn't he do it right the first time and sell it to his employer? Doesn't that sound like a business to you? That's a business. And he's thinking in an entrepreneurial way. He talks to colleagues who are also historians. And together they work themselves up into a great frenzy. Whoa, whoa, yes. Why don't we do this? Then, of course, they pretended they were economists. But, of course, they had a couple of econ courses. And you could have done this. So you could. You, with your question, you could have. A competitive analysis. So why is this product being delivered to their employer such a piece of junk that historians have to be hired to fix it? Then they discovered it. It was the market structure. Don't you look at, if you don't know the answer to the question now, why something is poor quality and high price, then you give me your name, and I shall talk to the chairman of the Department of Economics and find out who should not be graduating. What kind of market structure? I'm not being funny. This is how you build companies. They looked at the market structure and discovered, because it was an obscure product, there was almost no competition. And the few competitors were oligopolistic. Remember, you know what that means. Oligopolistic. And they were ripping the consumer off. That is to say, the historian's employer, and thought, fat, big, oligopolistic industry with a high price producing junk. Now, doesn't that sound like an entrepreneurial opportunity? Well, not if you don't notice it. But if you notice it, do market confirmation. You're the men and women of the marketplace. You're supposed to understand marketplace. You're supposed to understand market power. You want it? You've learned that market power is socially disadvantageous. You've also learned advantageous if you happen to have the market power, so you can maximize the value and your rate of return. Right? That was a little segue there, in case you weren't listening too carefully, because somehow I was deciding that money was bad, which I really don't want to tell you. And that's what they did. They started a business. Then they went to their employer, a huge organization, and said, instead of buying the junk from those idiots, why don't you buy a high-quality product from us? And we're fixing it. So you must trust us to do a good job. We'll just do it up right the first time and save you all this aggravation. Then you don't have to hire all these co-op students. Notice one thing. When they made this argument, they didn't say, and we'll sell it to you cheaper, because they'd already calculated, the profit margin. You're supposed to understand profit. It was monopoly pricing, but the cost was really low. They were going to raise the cost because they'd actually they'd make it right, but there was still this whopping profit margin. But the customer was concerned about quality. So they said, we'll deliver the quality. Yeah, well, we'll have to charge the same price. They started, 4 of them, arts students in history. I don't even think they knew how to count. They got somebody to help them count, I think. Well, that's what you're thinking, don't you, Joe? You're economists. You're quantitatively oriented. You have things in common with engineers. Yes, they do, actually. It's which is thinking all other artsies can't count with them. So 4 of them started, partners. In 8 months, they're cash positive. That normally doesn't happen. 8 months, cash positive. More cash in than cash out. Not profit, of course. That would be not correct. Cash positive in 8 months. In 18 months, they were able to pay themselves the same salary they would have earned upon graduation in professional employment. Not bad. Usually, if you start any kind of company, the best your company will pay you is lunch money for 2 or 3 years. And then, having done that, now they're paying themselves a reasonable amount of money, but they're very, very profitable. Like, very profitable. You want to run a successful business? First rule, make it very profitable. How soon? As soon as you possibly can. So they took every spare nickel, and drove it into expansion, into IT, software, specialized for them. They understand that other phrase you're supposed to understand, barrier to entry. Because they're going to enter a monopolistic industry and try to be a monopolist. Right? Right? This is supposed to nod and say, yes, you understand. See, I like being with the economic students. I can use language, technically correct language. They want to be a monopolist, and they're going to destroy the oligopolists. That was their plan. They did. They did. They got rid of their competitors altogether. And they used IT as one of their barriers to entry. Now, if you want to compete with them, you've got to hire a whole bunch of pointy-headed engineers to do. Well, actually, it was a bunch of pointy-headed coders, so you're safe. So they created customized software. So if you wanted to compete with them, you'd have to now make a huge upfront investment, and of course, you're starting and you're not profitable. So they drove the profit into what they should have: product improvement, technological advance that does in fact produce barriers to entry, legal ones, by the way, not illegal ones. They're being a powerful competitor by being highly efficient and highly effective, investing every nickel in growth. 10 years, 10 years later, just under 100 employees, all of them with degrees, many of them with master's degrees. Well, well. And how much debt do they carry? Zero. How much external equity did they have to get? You know, how much from investors? Zero. Bootstrapped. Cash flow. Arts students. Now, you see, I know what you're thinking. What the hell were they making? That's what you're thinking. What could a pack of historians, all the partners are historians, by the way. In fact, they all have graduate degrees in history, which is even worse. Well, no, if you have a no, because now you brand yourself. Like if you have an undergraduate history degree, you could just present yourself as a liberal arts educated person and, you know, sell life insurance door to door or something. But when you, well, no, yeah, you could. But when you have a master's degree in history, you've like taken a stamp and on your head, yo, I am a historian. I am absolutely unemployable. I'm also an entrepreneur. What do they sell? You see, you can't imagine what they sell. One of the things to answer your question is, you know where you find opportunities where other people aren't looking. Right. I really don't think in your wildest imagination when you're thinking of opportunities, you think, yo, I think a historically oriented enterprise would be a good plan for me. You know, maybe not for you, but if you had a history background and you at first conclude, let's see, how many historians are looking to be entrepreneurs? That's right, almost none. So they thought that was an opportunity. And you still can't even have the vaguest idea what they're doing. Well, what do they sell? What would a historian sell? What would a historian sell? For goodness sake, a historian can only sell one possible thing. They sell history. What do you mean, what do they sell? Of course they sell history. What you can't figure out is to whom. To whom would they sell history? And that's the point. That's the point. You're men and women of the marketplace. That is your strength. You have co-op experience. You've been in workplaces. You understand what competition is or isn't. You understand market structures. You are supposed to understand what constitutes profitability. You're supposed to understand your customers at a fundamental level. At a fundamental level. And so fundamentally, you see, who's going to pay for history? Like, because they're obviously very profitable, are they not? If you bootstrap yourself to 100 employees, you really must be charging a lot of money. Who is stupid enough to pay a lot of money for historical analysis? Governments. They might. Governments might. You know, a little museum, need a little historical background, one little contract. But really profitable? Government has historians on staff on their museums, for example. They have historical employees, but these guys aren't employees. And they're selling historical analysis. And some of their clients are government, but not museums, not for policy, for the best kind of business, which is the kind you should be looking for. They sell to a customer who's rich. Always good plan. Want a customer? Get a rich customer. Charge them a lot of money. Like, don't write that down. If you have to write that down, you make me bloody nervous. Like, really, truly. Of course you know this. So they found a rich customer with an urgent need to use their services. Urgent. That's the best customer of all. You're drowning. I get a life jacket. Here it is. Would you like to not die? Yeah, don't quibble about price. You don't quibble about price. You go, whoa, yes. So they found customers with an urgent need for historical analysis, and they charged them appropriately based on the urgency of the need. So, And I would answer your question also by saying, you find someone who has a huge problem that needs to be urgently solved, probably in a field without now 5,000 other people competing. The unexplored field, the ones in corners, the ones, moment please, the ones that you'd encounter in your co-op jobs, where you'd have an intimate knowledge of it. Yes?
I was just going to say, are you referring more to like the inelastic goods and services in terms of...
Damn inelastic. Perfectly inelastic. Where you gotta buy it, and price is, I mean, there are some bounds on the price, but they are really big ones. Where if you don't buy, you bleed cash like a stuck pig. Their customers need them so badly that, and that's why quality is so important, that if there's something wrong with the quality, the customer like bleeds money all over the floor. So I can't charge them more than all the money that bleeds on the floor. But if you're a big, rich customer, that's a lot of money, and you got a lot of wiggle room between the constraint of don't charge more than they would lose if you screwed up. I say this seriously. That is just one tiny example of the power of the co-op work experience. So one of the ways you find great enterprises, and that's what Stanford can't offer you. How many employers come to the University of Waterloo in the space of 12 months? You know, I hope you know, this is the world's largest co-op program. And that means range of jobs which is unrivaled in any other university anywhere on earth. Don't you think that is a degree of commercial intelligence that should inspire enterprise, that should provoke enterprise, that should give you the information you need? I'm in favor of, encouraging you, but the best encouragement is where you have information in your head about an opportunity which is so intriguing, at the very least you wish to explore it. How many employers? Last 12 months, more than 5,000. More than 5,000. Think about it. 5,000 of the world's greatest companies end up on this campus. And you could talk to your classmates. And one group of UW students, say 12 of you together, talking to each other, 12 of you could have a range of industrial experience that a pack of 40-year-olds could not duplicate. Imagine someone who'd been at Twitter, Facebook, Intel, Google, the Bank of Montreal, and a hedge fund in New York. Imagine what those persons could think up. I am in the unlikely position of having in one day, I will end up talking to someone at Facebook and Google at the same time. They are, of course, competitors to each other. And then throw in a conversation with Twitter at night. No, not the company. Employees in those places. Well, how could that not give you commercial intelligence? And nobody else, no other university could offer you that range. If you would share, if you would network with your classmates, and not just in economics, well, within economics to start out with, and they would reach out to pointy-headed CSers. I just hope there aren't any in the room. To math, the truth is, if you were interested in talking to, because you had a Google-ish idea, well, you could talk to Mike McCauley, for instance, the buffer box person. If you had an idea that Twitter might like, you can talk to one of my students who is the chief guru of Twitter's analytic department. He had a company. Twitter bought it. Part of what he did in his company, they decided to make him the person who's trying to figure out what that enormous Twitter feed actually means. They, of course, are hoping there's commercial value in the noise somewhere. Nobody's quite sure, but we all live in hope. And he's trying to figure it out. Do you see how extraordinary that is? You have an idea, you have a brilliant idea about something having to do with the auto industry. Your classmates can directly connect you in the auto industry, the energy industry, I don't care where, the financial industry. Your econ students, finance should sort of somehow fit your brain. You've got a clever way to do no form of trading. Your classmates work in the hedge funds in Manhattan. Yes, they do, virtually all of them. If I stand downtown Manhattan, I can throw a stone and hit a student. Like I've taught 23,000 people. You know what that means? I can stand in the financial capitals of New York, London, Sorry, what's the place in Ontario? Toronto. Sorry, forgot it for a minute. Or San Francisco. I just stand on the corner, and people start talking to me. It's like kind of spooky, actually, to tell you the truth. But that shows you the power of your network. And you envy Harvard students. Oh, if you only had the connections at Harvard. You know what? You know those Harvard students and their great reputation? There's one thing you've forgotten. You know how Harvard teaches in the famed business school? They use the case study method. Their students read about cases, come to conclusions about them, and debate in teams, and then debate various solutions, and their professors critique them, and occasionally an executive from the case comes in and then critiques that whole thing. And what do? Those poor Harvard students. They read case studies. In cooperative education, you live them. Don't you think that's a difference? And if you talk to your classmates, you're going to hear, not read a case, have someone describe the chaos at Company X. Your trusty professor knew that Nortel was going down for a count. Most of you don't even know who Nortel was. Once upon a time, there was a company called Nortel, which was one of the great technology icons of Canada. Went down in a poof of collapsing stupidity. I knew it was going to collapse because my co-op students at Nortel told me that. They told me that there was managerial chaos. They told me that when the chief executive officer of Nortel at a town hall meeting in the company announced the strategy for the next decade, as soon as he left, everyone laughed because his comments were so ridiculous. If you're the CEO and the minute your back is turned, everyone's laughing, the company is doomed. The co-ops weren't laughing, they were just appalled. Decided that, well, okay, next work term, they would pick a different, well, I'm sorry, but just do you understand what that means? One of the things we're going to do as we develop our initiatives, these new initiatives, is to focus much of our attention. We'll try to focus your attention on your workplace experiences. We're going to redouble our efforts to help you understand how your workplace experiences and those of your classmates allows you to find big problems urgently needing solution. That's not the only thing you do for a successful enterprise, but it really does make a lot of sense. So I have a graduating student now, 4B. 4B. Fall, he's on his last work term. He's in a big company. He discovers a big technological failure that's causing a lot of grief for his employer. He talks to a friend. They figure out they might have a solution. Might have a solution, but maybe they don't have the problem right. So he talks to the boss in the division he works and says, we've seen this big technical problem. It's actually an economic problem, has a technical basis to it. Discusses it with the boss, who says, oh yeah, we've been struggling with this problem for a long time. So he says, well, my friend and I, we've been talking about how we might do this, and we think there are some new techniques that could apply. We've just learned about them in the class. So they're going to do technology transfer, something they learned in the classroom that they want to move, and they're thinking about it. And so the boss is oh yeah, well that sounds like that's plausible. He says, well, you know, my friend and I think, well, he didn't. He says, me and my friend. Sorry, if you want to sound like an adult and start a business, please speak grammatically because you know how to do it, right? So I'm not gonna use the butchered language that you characters use. So the boss was favorably inclined. He arrives back here. He has a dilemma now. Well, he's got a good job. His co-op employer wants him to come be an employee. And all his life, in his mind, Be an employee. You know, that's what you do. You get an education, get some co-op experience, be an employee. And now there was a flicker of doubt in his mind for the first time in his... Was this my water, by the way?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to drink it anyway. But now he's back here. He's gotten a positive signal from the marketplace. And now it's causing him mental indigestion. At one level, I really do think he actually had preferred if he had not noticed this opportunity, because it would have made, now his life got complicated. See, everything was cruising. He has his life plan. It's all go chug, 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 chug. Whoa, something's gone wrong. I have too much opportunity. On the other hand, he's not an idiot, and bitching about having too much opportunity really sounded too stupid for him. So he started seriously considering it. He reached out for guidance, which is not a bad plan. He got guidance. The guidance was very complicated, very sophisticated, bogus. You know what you should tell him. Confirm that market information he got was correct. He's talked to one person. That's not called market research. That's called talking to one person. You don't rearrange your life because you've talked to one person. Even if it's a boss person. Just because it's a boss person does not mean he's a genius. Some of you know your boss persons are not geniuses, so why should I have to tell you that, right? You know that. So, hiked himself on a plane, because he had to fly to where his co-op work term was, had repeated conversations with senior executives in that company to find out if it really was as important as he thought it was. Their answer was enthusiastically positive. In fact, they were all excited that there was some new development that he seemed to know about that would solve their problem. But then again, not an idiot. This is a careful person. Enterprise does not mean you roll the dice. Entrepreneurs are not gamblers, right? Here's where you're not, too. They're not gamblers. Don't look at me like, well, I can't be an entrepreneur because I'm not a gambler. No, you're good. That means you should be an entrepreneur because you're not a gambler. So he also gets a friend, the less co-op and all its tentacles, because he wants to know about other companies. Okay, he's talking still to his employer, all right, at a senior level, and he's getting positive guidance, but this is just one company, more than one person in one company, but still one company. So he sends his friend off to an equivalent company who presumably has the same problem. Gets confirmation again. That's how it's done. Again and again and again, for 30 years, I have had similar experiences. So one of the things we want to do at the University of Waterloo is help you understand how important those cooperative education experiences are. And your first step in enterprise is to review every co-op work term you've had and think about what it means. If you're not a co-op student, then discuss it with co-op students. If you're not a co-op student and you're working, well, mind your workplace experience. It's about the workplace experience. Co-op gives you a range of workplace experiences, but workplace experience is all you need. And then you talk to your classmates. And then once you get a possibility of something, you seek out people who've been employed by these other companies. How would you find someone who's worked at Pixar? Well, ask friends and friends of friends, and ask friends and friends and friends and friends. Now, wait a moment. You have a friends platform. Why don't you use it for something useful instead of bragging about your non-existent social life? Use Facebook for something useful. Don't you tell me about social media, man, and then you don't use it to make yourself smarter, which is the only value it really does have. Well, it is the value. It allows you to share observations, information, to vet information, to qualify information, to make sure you're getting accurate information. So yeah, there's like your ability to share now. It's the word. You keep using the word share all the time. It's your word. I'm saying to you, it's damn your word, so why don't you live up to your word? You share all the time. You share in my office. You say, oh, I'm sharing on Facebook. Of course, I also know you use the word share as a synonym for steal. Yes, yes. Oh, now they're all looking with the who me look on my face. Well, you share software. I'm paying no attention to the licensing agreement which forbids the sharing. Yes, yes. So, but so fine, share then. Legally or legally. But seriously, I am serious. You can access a range of commercial intelligence that no other group of people your age can access. And that's why we'll kick Silicon Valley's ass. That's why someday someone will say about Silicon Valley, it's America's version of Waterloo. That's what we're trying to encourage you about. We're trying to provide more support services so you can do this. In answer to the question of how to do this, we are going to provide you more online resources that you can just consult. A new online for-credit course on the fundamentals of entrepreneurial behavior will be offered, in which we will show you how to, the fundamentals of entrepreneurial behavior, meaning the course will have like two themes: how to be an entrepreneurial employee and how to be an independent entrepreneur. We'll include someone asked about social entrepreneurship, we'll include social entrepreneurship examples. We'll allow you to see that the function of being an entrepreneur is just driven by rising competitive pressures in the world. So it isn't the question that a few of you have to be entrepreneurs. All of you have to be entrepreneurs, albeit in different ways, and possibly in different degrees. For example, if you want to make an impact in a certain industry, you probably have to do it as an employee. You can't build passenger aircraft as a startup. So then you maybe want to be an entrepreneurial employee at Boeing. Or at one of the... Suppose you wanted to be an aircraft... So suppose aircraft fascinated. You want to be an aircraft entrepreneur. Or an entrepreneurial employee in the aircraft industry. Well, I guess you have to move to Seattle. Or Texas or wherever Boeing is moving its new plant. Do you really? Actually, all you do is use home court advantage. Stay in Waterloo region. We're one of the world's leading suppliers to who? Boeing operates. Do you know that for 60% of the aircraft landing on the planet, the landing gears, whole landing apparatus, not the landing gears, the whole landing gear made in Canada. And don't you dare look nervous. Don't anybody look nervous. Whoa. The only thing between me and the tarmac descending at 500 miles an hour is a Canadian-made part. Otherwise, you ain't getting a degree. Let's just be clear on that. I'm kind of a gentle person, but I'll draw the line at you getting frightened that Canadian parts are keeping you alive. But do you see the advantage of that? Do you see the potential not only of a local economy, but of the connection of local economy to global industries? And so we will try to help you understand the power of both your cooperative education experience, plus other workplace experience you have, how you can find big problems to solve for your employer, which they will like, or something that is the basis of an independent enterprise. So part of the answer is already online for you, called beastar.uwaterloo.ca. What part of the title do you not understand? Be a star. And we talk about, for example, how to identify key problems. So it's partly an answer to your question about what industry you should go in. And my answer is a little different from others. My answer is find a problem that's big that you care about. And then see if it's solvable. And last and certainly not least, to econ students, there is one thing that you should be totally online with. It's the thing I struggle to teach to anybody who's not in economics. It is one of the most important indicators of successful enterprise or being a successful entrepreneurial employee. And that is why economists have to huddle together, because the world doesn't like us. Because we ask one damn awkward question that nobody wants us to ask. But if you ask it, it can be the basis of empire, and it can be the basis of not wild risk-taking empire, solid, well-planned enterprise, and that is the killer concept of opportunity cost. Don't you look at me now that this is the jargon you should recognize. The benefit forgone or the next best alternative. So, you know how to find the best possible idea? Find 10 killer problems. 10 urgent problems that rich people want solved. 10 of them. And then you pick the best one. The best out of 10. Now, don't you think that increases the odds that you're going to have one big kick-ass problem, and it justifies further research? Alternatives. It's not what the rest of the students want to hear about. They're so happy if they've one single idea in their head, and then they run amok. I have an idea. I will start an enterprise. Man, it's the dumbest idea. But you know, the second idea, the one you didn't get to, that was the brilliant idea. But you never got to the second one because that scares you. You know the old microeconomic rule, one of the best rules of life. If you're choosing from a set of one, that is to say you do not have an alternative for any course of action you're taking, then you don't know what you're doing because you don't know the cost of it. You can't know the cost of it because you have no alternative. The best way to successfully create an enterprise is to practice economics at its most fundamental level. Sure, you think I'm biased. Damn right I'm totally biased, and I'm right. Doesn't logic say I'm right? So, trust brute logic. We're going to improve the services that we're offering to you. And last and certainly not least, I must observe that I have now worked with more than 500 companies, startup Waterloo companies. They're usually teams, so that means I've been through more than 1,000, that's not the right word. I have provided guidance to more than 1,000 UW students. And the number of econ graduates that I've counseled about enterprise is not especially large. Out of 500 enterprises, I could show you how many on my fingers. I think you should do something about that. I think you should do something about that. You have the education and the orientation to do independent enterprise or to be a kick-ass entrepreneurial employee. I never use the L word when speaking to students about their future. Don't you use it either. The only person you ever wish luck to are the idiots of the world, because only luck will save them. My contrast, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you success as you apply your education to maximizing your opportunities. Thank you very much.